All right. Well, my name is Cincy, and I am the director of the Hope Venture here. I'm the host for today's podcast, Teaching Our Kids to Live and Love Generously. This is the second in a 4-part series we'll be doing, and I'm super excited about it. Many of you know we're mostly overseas. We work with those in extreme poverty in 5 different countries, people making less than $2.15 a day by UN standards. And so we can't do that without a fun, generous hub of people here that are helping give toward that and be generous so we can help other people. So we're going to take the month of February and just try to pause and give back to our donors if we can, to say, how can we help you in your journey of generosity? How can we come alongside of you in some new way? And I'm excited about that. I'm excited for the parents that might be listening to that, even to the singles. I think the content we've had in this already, I'm super excited about. So if wherever you're at in your journey, would love for you to hear what we're doing. We are going to have a guest every week on with us. We're going to launch these, if you're hearing them for the first time, every Monday in the month of February. But of course, they'll be on various different platforms. You can catch them anytime. But we will have a guest sharing their different experiences of how they've grown in generosity themselves, how they've taught that to their kids, or tried to, or failed to, or whatever else. And then even while you're listening, if you have young kids and they are running around screaming right now and you're like, oh, I really want to hear this podcast. And they're like, Mom, help me. Mom, do this. Dad, help me. Just maybe go to our social media, click on the link in the bio, download a PDF for them to color or to be engaged with. Go to our website. In the footer there, you'll find a link to this as well. If you want to download that PDF, there'll be something for your kids there that they can be, exploring and coloring while you take a sip of whatever it is you like to sip or eat. Be merry, chill out for a minute, and we'll get started. I'm so excited. So today, we have Katie Stelzer with us. Katie and her family have given to many of our different projects over the years of the Hope Venture, and I've watched her give to so many things in the community and lead her kids to do that. I'm super excited to have her on here. But one of the things I'm excited about, Katie, is that some of our donors that we've had on here, maybe a lot of them are a recurring donor. They've been a student sponsor with us, maybe, or our backbone team, like in a more continual way. And you and your family have done more like as God has enabled you. You kind of jumped in and done that. And it makes me think that you're prayerful about that. You're thinking about where do we want to give to this. And it's a reminder that we don't have to do this all the same way, about the freedom that's so exciting in generosity in the first place. God gives us freedom in our generosity. We haven't really talked about that a lot on these podcasts yet, but that freedom, and to have different guests on here that do that differently, that give not just the same way as everybody else. I think at the Hope Venture, we're trying to give custom opportunities for people to make a direct impact overseas to somebody with a real need, and then have joy in that. And so to watch that happen through different ways, different people engage with us. I'm excited to have you on here as someone who's not just like doing that the same exact way all the time, but you're doing that in big chunks at time, doing that in smaller ways, doing that in bigger ways, and all oftentimes with your kids as well. And so excited to talk to you about how you lead your kids in the community and various things you do with that. So tell us a little bit about Katie. Just let's introduce you. How many kids do you have? Tell us their ages, who they are. Tell us a little bit about your place in life right now.
Yeah. So, yep, I do have 3 kids. My husband and I, we just have been married for 20 years last October.
Oh, congrats.
So that's fun. Noah is our oldest. He's 16 years old. He's a sophomore. And then Sam, he's our second son. He is 12, going on 13 in May, so I'll have 2 teenagers. And then Hannah is 9, my youngest. She is about 9.5, so she's in 3rd grade. So,
Awesome. Tell us, so I'm a listener, trying to tune in, trying to connect. Who's this Katie Stelzer? What's her family like? What are some of the things your kids are into these days, or what's happening in tell us a little bit about your day-to-day world.
Yeah, so I've been a nurse for almost 19 and a half years, actually, and it is a huge passion of mine. I love nursing. Is definitely God's calling on my life. And so through nursing is amazing in the sense that I can work part-time. So I get a taste of working, but I also am home mostly with my kids. So Mike and I just thought that was super important that one of us be home most of the time to be there for our kids and what they're going through. So I work 1 to 2 days a week, outpatient as an RN. So my hours are like super spoiled. I'm about 9 to 6. So I still get to get my kids to school in the morning, and we have awesome babysitters to pick them up after. But, but yeah, so if I'm not working, then the morning daily routine is getting kids off to school and trying to slip in a little devotional or verse before they go off to feed them that. But and then all the home chores for me, I love classes at the Y with my friends and stuff. And then of course evenings I love picking my kids up from school. I think it's such a cool opportunity. They're ready to download when they get in the car usually. Most of them, whether it's good or bad, they're more talkative, so that's really awesome. But yeah, boys are in sports, basketball, lacrosse, football. Love hanging out with their friends. Hannah is our artsy girl, so she loves volleyball, but she loves drawing and coloring and writing stories and animals. And so we're just doing life like most people.
Do any of your kids do music? They must do music. I know you and Mike are very musical. Do they also do that? Or not that we need our kids to do the same thing we're doing. Hopefully
so they've all taken piano lessons. The boys have both played trumpet. Much to our dismay, they're not really in music right now, which has been a little bit a source of contention in the house. But I'm like, man, we can't force them to do stuff. But I'm hoping they're all very talented. So
I love how, again, that freedom. Our kids are not us, right? They have the freedom to do their own thing, to be themselves, and exciting to watch you guys journey even in that and say, you're free to do, what you want to do, but also if you want to do music or whatever. But also shout out to the babysitters out there. You were mentioning how you've had great babysitters so you can work till 6 p.m. or whatever. And just that's a way we give. That's a way we're generous. Also, families love it when they get some help, or whether it's a technical babysitter or a family member or a friend that steps in and helps us. That's a way we're generous. So shout out to that. All right, let's dive into just this idea of generosity. And we said we were going to take this definition out of the dictionary just to be simple about it, that generosity would be a readiness to give more of something, as in money or time, than is strictly necessary or expected. So to give beyond what's just the norm, to choose to go above and beyond. And I think we do that because if God fills us, that's our supplier. That's why we're able to do that as Christians in a way that's different than the world can give. Because if we're lacking, it's kind of hard to give. But if we have a supply, then we're able to be generous and to give more than the world might expect. Whether that's money or time or just care about some people. So I just wanted to start with, again, we can't do that with our kids if we're not learning that ourselves. And just wanted to dive into your story a little bit of what have you learned about generosity in your growing up or now, or anything that's affected you and your thoughts about it.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in a Christian home. So growing up, my parents talked a lot. They were just really open with us. And I think as they learned how to give and tithe, they talked to us kids about that. It was like, this is all God's anyway, and the Bible asks us to give a portion of what we make because it's His anyway to Him. So they taught that, they modeled that, and we definitely weren't poor, but we weren't super well off. But my parents were just always faithful, and they taught us kids how to do that as we earned money babysitting or whatever with a job. And then I think in other practical ways, we gave a lot of our time and talent. So my parents were youth group sponsors for my sister and I. My older brother and sister are quite a bit older than us. So my younger sister and I, we experienced missions trips. And we worked our tails off to go on those missions trips. Like we painted fences and held, food. We did like pancake feeds and all that stuff. So we worked really hard to raise money. But we went, and then we gave of our time to go on these missions trips. So like Romania, Mexico, a few different places we went. So that was another way. And then I think our home was always open to people in need. Like somebody's house burnt down. Their family stayed in our basement for a while. And we had foster kids for a little bit. We had foreign exchange students. Like we just always had people in our home that our basement was nothing to be excited about, but we just offered it when it was needed. And that just always left a huge impression on me. And I think based on that foundation, Mike and I got married when we were 21, so we were really young. We were still in school, trying to work, just pay for school, live. We just, like, from the very get-go, I think before we even got married, it was just like, we are tithing. Like, no matter what, no matter how much or little or much we have, like, we're going to give God the first, as a base, just 10% of what we earn, but more if God allows or tells us to. Just knowing that in that, he's going to provide for us no matter what. So that's just something we set as a foundation in our marriage, and we never argued about it. It was never like, oh, things are really tight this month, I don't think we can do that. And then it did get challenging. I mean, as you have kids, and then Mike's health took a pretty huge turn for the worse about 5 years into our marriage with his Crohn's disease. So he spent the better half of 10 to 12 years super sick, medical bills. There were months where, like, okay, like, we kind of need to pay this bill off, but we just stayed faithful to tithing. And honestly, God took care of us every single time. As we were faithful to give, there'd be, like, some friends of our from church, and they're like, I don't know why, but God just impressed upon our hearts to, like, give you this money. And it was like, literally, there were more times than I can count where it was the exact amount that we needed for whatever. And I'm like, that's why we're faithful, because not that we give to get, but I just think as we remain faithful, not knowing where money's going to come from, like, I think he just blesses that faith, you know?
You know, when you mentioned just that sense, even in that last example of, that's why we do, like, there was someone saw someone our need, and even as we were choosing in ways they didn't even know about to give in different ways, they blessed us in a totally different way. And I think I want to back up to even you were talking about growing up and watching your parents have people in your home, or watching your parents live out their faith. And you said that was just a part of life. Did you ever think, like, oh, I don't like them offering the basement, I wanted to play down there? Or did you find joy? Did you have a proud moment that struck you, like, oh, I'm glad we do this? Or, like, what were some of your emotions watching your parents do that? Was it all just, we just do it? Or were there some times you're like, that's how I want to live too? Or what was that like?
I think I was pretty little when they started doing that. I don't know that they did that earlier on in their marriage or whatever, but I think by the time my younger sister and I were 5, 6, 7, like, I just remember people being in our home and it being such a fun thing. Like, it was, oh my gosh, like, there's people here, and there's somebody else to play with or do stuff with. And we lived out on an acreage out in the middle of nowhere, southeast of Lincoln, so we had lots of land. And like I said, we didn't have a ton. It's not like we lived elaborately, but we just gave. And I think because it happened at such a young age, I think it was just like, oh, this is so cool. So,
which is why we want to talk about parenting, because if you could instill that at that young age, and it just becomes a part of our life, and we have joy and, oh, somebody's here today, and not like, oh, somebody's here to open up the house for the first time to a stranger, and I don't know what that's like. But if we're around it growing up, and we just have some joy in that, and I mean, you're talking about joy, you're talking about not getting to a place where you have this excessive, amazing amount and then you give it. But, you know, we just had a basement and we just offered it. It wasn't necessarily the most elaborate basement or the most everything that anybody ever had, but we were willing to offer it, and I found joy in that. And that is hugely how this all unfolds, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm not going to lie. There probably were a couple situations like, we had a family in town that's house caught fire, and they maybe weren't, there was not the most cleanliest, and they smoked and stuff. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
That maybe it wasn't exciting, but you know, for the most part, like they were there, and I think it just felt good to help somebody who needed help. So yeah,
that's so great too. Because
just trying to be honest.
Yeah, it's so good because when we give, it doesn't always work out like we thought it would. All smooth and everybody's happy. Like, oh shoot, why did we do that one? But like over time, you still had this culture of giving, and like it turned out.
Yeah,
but,
it did.
Yeah, honestly, it's if you're trying to teach your kids generosity and you try something and it doesn't work, that's probably part of the norm.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's dive into, I asked you do you have any like verses that have shaped your thinking on generosity? Tell us a little bit of what you found on that.
Yeah, so I had a hard time just off the cuff thinking of one particular verse, but as I was kind of searching through the Bible for verses on money, I honestly came across this 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, which I don't know that I'd really heard as much as some of the others, but do you want me to read it?
Yeah,
okay.
Let's read it.
So it says, this is New Living Translation. So it says, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up their treasures as a good foundation for the future so that they may experience true life.
So good.
Awesome?
So good, yeah. So awesome. All right, dive into that a little bit. Like, what speaks to you in that? Like, what shaped you out of that? Or what, as you even look at it now, what resonates with you?
Yeah. I think the word rich kind of throws everybody off because I think by United States standards, I'm like, well, I'm not rich. But technically, almost everybody living in the U.S. is rich, so to speak. Totally. So I just love it because it just says, so even if you are rich, even if you do have money, don't be caught up in pride in that. Mm-hmm. Don't use that as your pedestal or source of betterment. And then it says also not to trust in that money because it's unreliable. So you may be doing good one year and then the next year something may totally come up to wreck
you mentioned those health problems or, all of a sudden you have health issues like,
you're like, crud, so that's not there. So that's not where our trust should be laying. And then it's the very next thing, it tells us what we should trust in. It says trust in God, who richly gives us all we need, which I think of a verse, I can't remember but it says all good things come from above. So it's like, everything is his anyway. Anything good I have is from him. And then it says, tell them to use their money for good. But not only that, but it's not just talking about money, but it's talking about what we do with our time. It says, be rich in good works and generous to those in need, which can be more than just financial, like money. And then always being ready to give, to share with others. And then it just tells us where we should store our treasures. We should store our treasures. It says, by doing good, this will be storing up treasures as a good foundation. So to me, that means storing up our treasures in heaven because we can't take anything with us from here. So I just think it kind of includes your time, your talent, your treasures, your character as a person. I love it.
I love something, Rich has talked about, first of all, us being rich. And you mentioned, maybe not in American standards, but 97% of the world lives less than the American standards, so we are, many of us listening to this, rich in a lot of ways, but and then it talked about God giving richly. Like, if we could remember, God actually does give to us, not just sparingly, but he gives us richly. He gives us a lot for our needs, but also it said for our enjoyment. Gives us all that we need for our enjoyment. It's not like he just, again, like he scrapes by. Even when I look at a sunset and a sunrise, I see how he didn't just make this robotic world function right. I mean, he makes it beautiful and creative and fun, and we can smile and we can joke around, and enjoy the life that God's given us. And then we should be rich in good works, like you talked about, generous to those in need, ready to share, all that just anticipation of, hey, is somebody else out there that might need something today, instead of just this closed mind. And then at the end of it all, so that they may experience true life. Like, this is true life. Living in love generously, that is the life. Like, that is it, and it's so good.
I did actually have to look up to see if enjoyment was in all the versions.
Okay,
and I'm like, I looked up, I think, in the NASB, and I'm like, it is. Like, he does want to bless us for our enjoyment.
That is amazing,
he's
right?
Not out there to make us suffer, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I love that, too.
Even in the sacrifice, even when somebody comes into our home that we didn't think that was a good choice, Mom and Dad, that one's not, but in general, God is not just out to take from us. He's here giving us what would be a good life. And then in the world, we think that's a lie, or that it's a negative thing to give or to lay down ourselves so that we could find this amazing God. He is amazing. If it's true, then if he is amazing, it's worth laying down those little things that seem so important.
Yeah.
Wow. So good. I'm just going to touch on, you mentioned also when I was, there's so many verses and so many of the people we'll hear from, we'll talk about so many of them as well. But I'm just going to touch on, Matthew 6, where the birds and the lilies don't worry about their stuff. Why do we worry so much and hold on to things? And even Hebrews 13:5, where don't love this money. The love of money is what, we have money. We have to function with money. We need, we have medical bills. We have life. We have to have a job, whatever. But don't let that be your true hope. Don't let that be your source of just affection so much that you hold on to it tightly when God says, I got you. I got you. Let it go a little bit so I can bless you. Otherwise, we just block out those blessings, I think, too. So
for sure.
Very cool.
That's good.
Well, let's talk about your kids a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how you've maybe tried to interact with them about generosity. You can start with Hope Venture if you want, or we can dive right into some other things. I know you've done a lot of other things. Let's talk about where you want to start.
Sure. Well, I can just give you a little background on just kind of generally how raising our kids. I think with the missions trips I took as a high schooler, that really impacted me to just open my eyes to what is out there, to the poverty, to what people need, but also locally in Lincoln. I'm like, I loved missions trips. My dream someday would be to get to a few more, but this is not where my life is at right now. But I'm like, you know what? There's a mission field here in Lincoln. And I'm like, just in general, I think Mike and I were like, gosh, we don't want our kids to be selfish and entitled and greedy. And how can we instill that in them? And that's some of the awesomeness of, God blessing us to be able to have me at home most of the time, is that I had a chance to instill some of that in our kids, and we've been, it's been fun. But we just wanted to teach them to look outside of themselves.
Absolutely.
Who is it around you that might have a need? How can we meet that practically? And also the amazing joy that comes from giving and serving others. I think I'm almost blessed more by loving and serving and giving to others than probably that person is, or maybe equally. So anyway, I think in a practical way, when the kids were a little bit younger, and I was looking back on, I think we did this for 4 different years, but I was just like, gosh, how can we do this in Lincoln?
Yeah.
So I created a little Facebook group called Kids Loving Lincoln, and I think COVID kind of put the kibosh on some of that, but for about 4 years before that, I have a lot of good friends down at People City Mission. Tom Barber married Mike and I when we were in college, and so I just called their director. I'm like, how can kids serve practically at the People City Mission? Like, what can they do? And I'm talking like little kids. My kids were, I don't know, 8, 9, whatever. They were younger, and and I wanted to include other families, whoever wanted to. So they said, summertime, brownies and ice cream. They love ice cream. It's such a treat. So we gathered a bunch of families, and we all made brownies and brought ice cream and all the toppings. And we served the Sundays, and mostly I had the kids serve the Sundays over all the lunch hours to the men's shelter and everything, and the looks on their faces was so amazing. And then we served them practically in other ways. They're like, really, the moms would love an hour of childcare. So after we did the brownies and ice cream, a group of us went over and we provided childcare for whoever wanted to drop their kids off in the daycare kind of childcare center. We did a little VBS thing. We had some games outside that we planned, kind of like a VBS type thing. What other, I think, the other things we did with that Kids Loving Lincoln is we did landscaping for a local church. We made cards and delivered them. Like we had the kids hand them to the nursing home residents a few times. So that was really cool. Other ways outside of that is just encouraging our kids to give to the VBS missions. We have had a Compassion International child for as long as I can remember. So we don't always do the best at doing the written stuff back and forth, but we have their picture on our fridge and try to pray for them. And a couple other ways just in our neighborhood, like we try to be really intentional with our neighbors as God opens those doors. So from the time Noah was 3, we started baking cookies, and it's kind of evolved into making like stovetop potpourri, and we deliver those door to door to everyone on our immediate block, and they get to hand those to them, and it just makes it's a connection point. It opens that relationship opportunity to just share and give. And then we shovel snow for our neighbors next door. Like you guys aren't getting paid for this. We're just doing it to help out, and that's been a huge blessing to our neighbors. I don't know, local ministries like the Bottle Drive, City Impact, the kids choose a gift of love give that they would like, and we donate that to Gifts of Love. And then tithing, trying to teach tithe. We don't really do allowance. I don't really know how we've gone back and forth on that, but they do random chores or mowing for grandparents or whatever, and we try to kind of instill like 10% of that, like let's practice giving that and stuff. So anyway,
there's so many good things in there. And so first of all, for our listeners, if you're like Katie and you're a go-getter and you're thinking like, for one, every generation and every city needs a new mom that's going to come along in the next generation and say, hey, how does my generation do this? And you have to alter your thinking. It's not just one and done. We're uniquely gifted and talented and have some strengths. So you had some strengths of, hey, I don't mind gathering people. I don't mind coming up with the ideas or even asking some friends and then joining those ideas together. I don't mind going down to People City Mission and organizing it so that we're ready for these different moms. So maybe you're like that, and you can think of some ideas that would bless your city, bless your community, bless your neighbors, and you can organize yourself, your kids, your community of friends to do that. And like Katie not only taught her kids that, but brought her friends with her to say, maybe you're like her friend. Like, you don't want to organize it, but hey, I'll come along with you. That's great. That also is needed. Katie couldn't do that on her own. The Hope Venture couldn't do what we're doing on our own. We need people to come with us. You don't have to start a new nonprofit. All you need to do is figure out who you are, how you were made, what's on your heart, and join in with somebody doing that. Whether that's a Facebook group, nowadays that is saying, hey, how do you guys want us to do? Are you guys available next Tuesday morning or whatever, and so many great things in that from looking, like understanding there are needs, from taking your childhood experiences of going on missions trips and understanding there's other people living differently than me. I know when we talked with Veronica last week, we talked about just being in other cultures, understanding people live differently. And so if we're too locked in our own world, we don't even see that sometimes. So just getting outside of ourselves, teaching your kids like, hey, you're not getting paid for this, but we're just doing this because a neighbor that could shovel should know, for a neighbor that's struggling with that, that's a good thing to do. And we are going to be rich in good deeds, right? We're going to be rich in good works, and we're going to experience true life out of that, right? Your kids are going to experience true life when they learn to give. Like, it's a joy. It's for their enjoyment even. He's giving us richly, not so he takes from us and like, oh, I have to give, I have to go down to the People City Mission. Actually, you can do that. And even not only just do the brownies, and we're going to make brownies, we're going to take ice cream. Wow, to go above and beyond that, to say they also could use childcare. They also could use this. Now, it doesn't mean Katie stops being a nurse. It doesn't mean you stop being a parent, doing all your things, and you work full time for People City Mission. There are ways we can step in at moments and then step out of that and also do our life, you know? But if our life is closed off, then we're having trouble seeing those needs and stepping out into that. And now your kids are doing that. What do you hope your kids will gain from kind of these experiences, do you think? Gosh,
I hope, Well, I didn't get to ask all three of them. I'm like, I've kind of asked them a question like, how do you think I've taught you to live generously? And like, is it making a difference? And then I kind of started writing down ideas, but then you wonder if they're picking up on stuff. And gosh, I just want them to look outside of themselves. I think that's the other thing. I mean, several years ago, I would say we're not maybe as active in maybe doing stuff at the People City Mission outside the home.
Sure.
You know, it gets harder, I think, as they get older to do some of those extra activities and harder to pull all of them together. And so now that my oldest is 16 and he's driving on his own, I'm like, oh, okay, like he's doing his own thing. But I hope that they can just see that we've grown and modeled that they can look outside themselves. So even on the way to school, every day we try to sneak in a devotional if we can, but on the way to school, that cart ride to the school, it's a little bit of chit chat, but it's like, okay, I'm going to pray for our day every day like that. I'm like, I want you guys to go in covered in prayer today. So it's like, really I think just asking them and praying, God, how can you help us see ways to show your love, your compassion, your kindness? And I'm always like, look for ways to be a blessing to others. I'm like, there are kids hurting at your school. Look for that kid that's standing on the outside. Look for the kid that's being bullied and maybe put a stop to it. Or say, you know what? Not cool. You know, be the one that stands up to do the right thing. And I think even just being generous and showing kindness in that, and I just pray that over them. And I think just them being the one to stand up to do the right thing, to show love, to show the love of Jesus, not only in what we believe, but living and acting and speaking that with our actions. Even if it's, maybe you're the one showing respect to the teacher when everybody else isn't. You know? And just reminding them that everyone has a story. So they'll be like, man, this kid was really getting on my nerves today. And I'm like, yeah, maybe they were having a bad day, or maybe they've got stuff going on in their home or in their household that is really tough that they're going through, or maybe, you know, they lost a family member, or maybe they're just struggling with something. I'm like, you got to see past the behavior and just try to look to that person and their heart, and like I try to kind of teach them that, because I'm like, everyone has a story. So I think just
Katie, this stuff is so good. If I'm a mom out there, I mean, I'm a dad, whatever, I'm thinking, wow, like these are all just such great reminders. Hopefully, you know, it's not like our listeners aren't doing these things already, but all the more, you know, be rich in good deeds, be generous in how many of those. Like I did that. I helped at People City Mission one time a year ago, you know, like, well, be rich in good deeds. Keep at it. Keep every morning, you know, covering your kids with prayer. I think of the little moments you have with your kids too, as they get into elementary school, say, or even you're talking about high school, a driver, a 16-year-old, you don't get that drive time anymore, and you're like having to find new ways. I remember, you know, what you're saying about that drive to school, making the most of that and settling yourself to say, hey, let's, you know, think of this as a moment to prepare ourselves to live out the life God's given us, to extend his kindness, to be in the moment, blessing those that we see different than if Jesus is real, he ought to fill us so much that we're different to this world than everything we see around us. So you're teaching that kid and your kids in that moment driving to school. And then that moment after school, you talked about loving, picking them up from school. I know for us, we mostly did it like the first week of school every year, but we had root beer floats after school got out the whole week of the first week. So we just get in a rhythm. Like when you come home, it's fun to come home. We'll do something fun. We got root beer floats waiting for you, or a different snack if you decide you don't like root beer floats. And we had 4 boys, so sure enough, you know, somebody decides they don't even care about root beer floats. So we have to try something different, chocolate or whatever. But I'm going to make that moment after school somewhere where you want to be, where you want to talk to me and unload, and you start to get in that habit of, hey, like mom's here, dad's here, we're here for you. We want to make the most of these moments to help you navigate, hey, that kid at school was bugging me or whatever. Like, how should we handle that? That's hard. That's real in your world right now. That's real. But how can we not just be selfish and do life ourselves, but care? Oh, so good stuff. So many good things. Anything else you would want to share before I start to wrap things up?
Gosh, I think I had so much more prepared, but as far as like the Hope Venture thing, I just want to get into that a little bit of just how we have just loved. I think as soon as you and Jeff and everybody started this ministry, I was like, oh yes, like you guys are so amazing, and I love that there's a local ministry that works abroad, and you guys, I mean, you don't just, oh, we're going to ship some money over there. I love that you guys go over there and you do life with these people for short spurts of time. Yeah. And we just truly believe in what you do. And we love you guys and your heart for people and your heart for God and mission. And yeah, like you said, we're not like a continuous, but like we definitely, I think one of the things we've done with our kids is we've sat down with that December catalog and we open it up. We're like, okay, guys, like we love reading the stories and what it goes to. We love seeing the little faces that these ministries go to, the adults and the kids alike. And yeah, so it's been awesome. So we all actually will pick out stuff from that. So that's been really fun. And we truly believe in what you guys are doing and love that. And then Mike and I have been like, okay, we've got a little extra income this month. Like, where can we give this? And been prayerful about that. And he's led us to you guys many times. Yeah. So yeah, and I think one last kind of my wrap-up thought, which will be, I think living generously it's a lifestyle. It's like a way of life. It's a way that we can worship God. So not only can we worship him with our voice and singing and music, but we can worship him in how we give and how we treat others. One of our favorite verses is 1 Corinthians 10:31. So it says, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Yeah. So like, if is the way I'm spending my money, even if it's on clothing or something I want, is like, is this necessary? Is it a good use of my resources? If it's my time, like, God, how do I spend my day? I've got this time where the kids are at school. I'm like, I know I've got cleaning to do, but like, give me, or even in my season of life, asking him how I should spend my time. And, it changes. It's constantly evolving. And then just teaching our kids to use their gifts and their talents for God's glory too. Yeah. So just teaching them. And then I think the other thing is how to listen to the Holy Spirit and be obedient to that. We had cool opportunities where we've seen a homeless person on the street when we're heading to the grocery store, and the kids are like, Mom, what are we going to do about that? I'm like, well, let's get some bread and peanut butter and jelly and let's give it to them. And they were praying for you, or Hannah had a really cool moment where she really, during the baby bottle drive, she felt like God was speaking to her to give her own decent chunk of money. And I immediately almost kind of shut it down. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, let's pray about that. So just getting them, and she did. She went ahead and gave that money, and it brought such joy to her. And then as a parent being like, like to teach your kids when they come up with an idea, not to shoot it down, but to be like, let's pray about it. Let's hear what God has to say about that. So
isn't that so cool? I think sometimes we do like get startled by our kids' response, and we don't do that, but wait, they wanted, like, if you're trying to teach your kids generosity, don't shut that down. So good. And like you're saying, this is a lifestyle. This is, we're trying to focus on that this month, not because somebody needs money. It's because we find true life. We experience true life in being generous and living differently with the Holy Spirit leading us, with the Holy Spirit making us different. We can extend that to others. And so we want to leave everybody with a challenge each week. And I know last week we were talking about, noticing the chocolate chips and the moments where we can share something. But and there's so many things you talked about here of the, giving what you can and stuff. But I really, one thing I'm catching as I talk with you, Katie, in this context, is the intentionality you have taken to say, we are not going to let these moments pass where we have an opportunity to teach something to our kids or to model something to our kids, to live that out ourselves, to be transparent that I don't do that perfectly all the time, but I'm going to try to model this. And whether that's, okay, we're going to start a group on Facebook, and okay, we're going to go down to People City Mission. Okay, we're going to shovel our neighbor's snow. Okay, we're going to pray during our drive to school, and we're going to say, kids, we hope you're able to bless somebody today, And so I want to challenge our listeners to be intentional. Pick one thing to choose, set aside some time this week And ask yourself, am I being intentional with the time I have with these kids to teach them how to live and love generously, to experience true life? I want them to experience true life. I want for their enjoyment. It's right there, for their enjoyment. Yeah. Can I help model that for them? And it's going to bless them. It's going to make it better for them. So can I be intentional this week to say, I'm going to make a plan. I'm actually going to sit down for a minute, give myself a break, not just to go do my own thing with my friends or to be selfish myself, but to say, how can I intentionally pour out to my kids so they experience true life? And so that's our challenge to you this week. We're excited. Thanks, Katie, for being on with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's do it. Adios. Yes. Awesome.
Thanks.
Yes.